Hello and welcome back to the My First Marathon podcast. My name is Taylor, and today I'm joined by a runner who fell in love with running over 18 months of training from couch to marathon. We talk about his first marathon experience at the Atlanta Marathon, where his community of friends actually showed up for him as a surprise, and how community has become such a big part of why he runs now. We talk about all the highs and lows of training, as well as what changed for him as he prepares for his second marathon that's actually coming up next month. There's a lot of great stuff in this episode I'm really excited to share with you. So without further ado, please welcome Travis. Travis, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm really excited to talk to you. How are you doing this weekend?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing great. Cool. Well, we just touched on it a little bit, but we have pretty similar timelines for running our first marathon. You ran yours a day after I ran mine in February, so
Right.
a lot of parallels here, I'm sure. But I'm excited to kind of break down the journey for you. So we'll start from the beginning. How did you end up in the running world originally?
I grew up playing sports. I think a lot of people who find running a little bit later are ex-athletes. At least a lot that I've met, who weren't runners in high school or anything. But I played baseball from a really young age. Played baseball, played football. Always an athlete, but was always a bigger guy. And so running was just really punishment instead
Sure.
of something I ever really looked forward to. But then I just started walking the dog a lot in the summer of 2022, honestly, and got up walking him 5 miles a day, just around the neighborhood. I worked from home, so that was the way to take kind of, mental breaks throughout the day and walk him a couple laps through the neighborhood and stuff. And then October of 2022, I ran my first mile, just full mile, after, walking so long and kind of walking and jogging. And then, yeah, I remember it was end of October 2022, I ran my first mile, and then I was like, I could do this. I could, maybe run a 5K. And then what it really was for me is I'm 29 now, and at the time I was 28 or 27, about to be 28, and with 30 creeping up
Sure.
on me, it was seriously okay, I might do something big. So originally it was me wanting to run a marathon for my 30th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it all started. That's, was the starting point, and the plan was around the new year, end of 2022, beginning of 2023. It was okay, I'm going to give myself these next 2 years to train for my first marathon for my 30th birthday. And my birthday's in February, and it just so happens every year the Atlanta Marathon is every February. So I was oh, that kind of lines up perfectly. Then just with training so much and finding some running friends and finding a little running community and stuff and really kind of diving into it, I was so far ahead of schedule, and at least I thought it was going to take 2 years, to go from
Sure.
basically couch to marathon. And then I remember last summer, just on a training run, I ran 13 miles, or my first half marathon just on a training run,
Sure.
and I was oh, I'm 8 months away from the 2024 Atlanta Marathon. I could do this. And then when I ran that first half marathon on just a training run, it was okay, yeah, let's go for my 29th birthday instead of my 30th, and that's kind of really how it took off and led me to running my first marathon back in February.
Very cool, very cool. So it came up pretty organically. You were just kind of, like you said, walking the dog a little bit and starting to kind of reframe your relationship a little bit with moving outside and doing that kind of thing. And then one thing led to another, and you were you were
Yeah,
signing up for a marathon.
yeah, and
Very cool.
just also I just have to give her a little shout out because I've always been into sneakers and running shoes and all that.
Yeah.
Especially kind of being an ex-athlete, always loved running shoes, always loved really good looking sneakers. And from 2020, I started following Emily Heller with Run Like Heller, all of her running shoe reviews and stuff like that. And that kind of, Like I was running a little bit, like I'd say running and walking, just
Sure.
on and off for a couple years and all. And then, but like I said, watching her videos kind of sparked an interest a few years ago, when all of us were just sitting around, like during early COVID. I actually found her YouTube video and kind of got into watching her, running shoe reviews and stuff. And that was kind of like a little seed, that started, the idea of like, yeah, getting into running. And, like I said, it was really those first couple, like from 2020 to 2022, it was like, I might have ran like 20 miles a year.
Sure.
It
Sure.
wasn't like I was running much at all or consistently, but it was like, okay, I could run, 10 minutes and then walk break. It was that
Yeah.
type of deal. But yeah, it
Yeah.
started really in 2020, with watching Emily Heller run like Heller videos.
Yeah. You're like, I like these shoes, so I got to figure out a way that I can build my personality around this. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. So you said you were kind of walking the dog, and then you decided to, did you sign up for a 5K, or you were just thinking like I can run the distance of a 5K to start?
It was, well, that was another thing. I didn't really race like at all.
Hmm.
I didn't race much those first 6 8 months. Like I had done a half marathon training run before I ever even did like a local 5K or 10K.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was really just, I really just dove into the training. And then just through meeting people in the running community and, finding friends, who were runners and stuff, then I started kind of going to local 5K races and doing more, local races for sure, just because of the fun.
Yeah.
It's such a big party, especially post race, having a
Totally.
couple free drinks and just hanging out and talking about, how painful that was with your
Yeah,
friends. It's
exactly.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So that's interesting. I think that's pretty unique, probably, to go through a lot of your sort of half marathon training,
Yeah.
without actually having a race signed up for. So
Yeah.
what was kind of like the internal motivation to train during that time?
Really, it was really having the end goal of the marathon.
Mm-hmm.
That was the big goal. Like that was my mountain to climb, was the marathon. And I knew I would hit those distances training for it anyways. And so really for me, it was just like, okay, get to the finish line of the marathon, of getting to the marathon distance, and
Sure.
all those other, race distances kind of just fell into the training really. And, and again, it was just, I mean, I love half marathons way more than full marathons. I love,
Sure.
love, love half marathons, but it was just, like I said, the end goal was so just big and so kind of ingrained in my head. It was like, oh, I'll get to those along the way, and I'll do some fun runs along the way. It was just no pressure, or I had no pressure on myself to go out of my way to run a half marathon or run a 10K locally, just starting off. Like I was just so
Sure.
like, kind of head first into the training of it all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. You had the sort of ultimate goal at the end, and you were like, I'll just figure
Yeah.
the rest of this out along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah.
Basically.
Cool, cool. So, were you following some sort of training plan along the way, with like a resource that you found online, or what sort of were you following for training?
Yeah. Well, those first couple months of kind of running and walking and stuff, I'd say really from like November of 2022 until like February or March of 2023, I really wasn't following much of a training plan. I was like looking back on some Strava like stats and stuff. I was running way too fast.
Mhm.
Like I was running some like
Yeah.
9 minute mile paces then, and like that's a speed workout for me now.
Right.
Like it was just stupid, and I was killing myself over a 1.5 mile training run or 2 mile training run, and just being worthless after that because I was just going just so all out and
Yeah.
kind of stumbling over the early stages of it. But then I actually found Runna, the RUNNA, the
Mhm.
app. I use their free options, their free training plans on there, which are very straightforward and just it breaks it down very black and white. There's not much extra.
Sure.
And for me, it's very simplified. And it's like, on Monday, you're doing this tempo workout for 5.2 miles. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
very just, like I said, simplified. But I started using that in March of 2023. It's funny, I didn't really do a 5K or 10K training plan at all. I had made it up to where I was running about like 3.5 miles at a time. So I was like, okay, I can start off really slow with this and build up. So I did a half marathon training plan, that was 12 weeks. And then I did a full marathon training, like I went straight from a half marathon training plan that was 12 weeks into a full marathon training plan that I think was 16 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually did another full marathon training plan on top of that. So it was it was like 12 weeks and then like 15, 16 weeks and then 15, 16 weeks. So
Wow.
basically the rest of the year was this marathon, half marathon training plan, marathon plan again.
Wow.
Just because I knew I was going from couch to marathon seriously,
Sure.
not
Sure.
being a runner and all that. And yeah, I wanted to be over prepared instead of just getting absolutely wrecked on race day. And I still got absolutely wrecked on race day, but maybe not as bad as I would have if I didn't, really kind of again just dive into all the training of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a long time to train though. Like what do you felt like? I know you were already signed up for your marathon at that point, right? The marathon that
Yeah,
you had in February?
yeah. I signed up for the Atlanta Marathon, which was February of 2024. I signed up for that in like August of
Okay.
2023. Yeah, so a good at least 6 months or so out.
Cool.
So I knew it was coming. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. When did you kind of link up? You mentioned that the kind of community and the friends that you found like along the way were really
Yeah.
important to training and everything. So when did you find that group of friends?
It's so funny how all that happens and stuff. First off, with like a smaller account, meeting a couple like local Atlanta runners just in the area and stuff. But then like the big one was Alex Hermanson. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hermans. Yeah. He ran. I was following him, and he ran a race like a couple miles from where I was gonna be on vacation, like
Oh,
the
cool.
the following month. And I just messaged him. I was like, "Hey, I know where you ran. I'm gonna be there. On these dates. Maybe we can link up." And so we actually did. We ran like a 5K in the morning and went and had breakfast, and then that's how we met. And we talk a lot, and he actually came and surprised me at my marathon and all. So that was
Yeah.
cool. And then like simultaneously while that was happening, the below average running was had open applications for new ambassadors, and just like honestly after like 2 or 3 times of like opening up the ambassador application and starting it and being like, they're not gonna take me. I haven't been running that long. And then finally, like one afternoon, I was like, all right, I'm sending it in. And I like finished, the ambassador application. And funny enough, it was, I think, the evening after Alex and I had ran. I got the email from Nicole Lynn, who's the founder of Below Average Running, and she's like, "Hey, congratulations! Like you've been accepted." So like that, just couple days was awesome.
Yeah.
um, so especially being below or a part of Below Average Running, like we have 12, 13 ambassadors, and yeah, we're a pretty tight knit group, and it's
Yeah.
awesome just being a part of that. And that's been huge because I ended up going with 10 of them to the Dallas Marathon weekend last December, and 5 of us ran the half marathon, and 5 of us ran the full marathon. So it was a big, kind of race weekend for all of us with below average
Yeah.
running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like that weekend you met Alex and you were approved into the group was like kind of a turning point for you, right? So
It was. If anyone sees this who puts out running videos, like so often it's like I'm just throwing out this video into an empty tunnel that who knows what
Yeah.
happens? Who knows what happens? Who knows who will see it? But yeah, like after I started my running Instagram in March of 2023. So after, 4 or 5 months of making videos and just wondering, like, what the heck am I actually doing? Like, to have those two
Yeah.
things happen really simultaneously, it was like, okay, this is fun. I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm meeting all these people, and
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely was kind of like a turning point, at least in my, video and content creation and stuff like that, because, yeah, it was just like,
Totally.
oh, I'm on the right path now.
Yeah. I think that's an important point to make, I guess, for anybody that's thinking about posting about your running journey. I think
Yeah,
that you should definitely go for it because you never know what sort of like you said, opportunities or even just communities that you're going to find through just like
yeah,
putting yourself out there and being maybe a little bit vulnerable with people online. So I think that's great.
yeah,
That
for
that was
sure.
a little bit of a turning point. How did you do you feel like that kind of impacted your running at all? Like, was that a confidence boost for you in the running world as well?
Yeah, I'd say it was definitely like it definitely fired me up more. It
Yeah.
was, you know, having those friends who were encouraging and who I saw were putting in the miles just like I was, and Nicole has ran what, 5 or 6 full marathons now, and to see her being able to do it, not being able to do it, but seeing her do it, and seeing a friend, go for it and do all that she's done and stuff, and Alex with all of his, stuff online and everything, just it did really fire me up,
Yeah.
and gave me more support, having friends to lean on and ask advice, running advice, and all this stuff. It was, like we were saying, a turning point. It was, so
Yeah.
that was last July. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. I'm sure you and Alex had a lot to talk about on the shoe side because I interviewed him a couple of weeks back. He said
Yeah.
the same thing that he was into the shoe side of things before he was into the running side of things, which I think is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So where do you feel like kind of your high points of training were and where were some of the lower points for you?
Um, man, that's tough. Someone gave me some advice very early on, and it was never judge a run by the first 10 minutes, or never judge
Mm,
a run by the first mile. There's been, and any runner knows this. Like, there's been 5 mile runs that are twice as bad as a 10 mile run, or twice as bad as a half marathon training run. And also, I mean, there was definitely some low points, even on like shorter runs and stuff. I remember I ran
sure.
my first 20 mile run last August, just in a training run, and I got so chafed, and that was just like it was such like a wake up call. It's like, oh, you don't know what you're doing. You probably didn't have the right gear and all this other
Yeah.
stuff, and you should have prepared a little bit more. And just really, I mean, starting off running is, you think it's so simple, and it really is simple. It can be as simple as you want. You can just lace up some tennis shoes that are comfortable and go out and run a few miles.
Yeah.
Or you can dive into it and go through all the training and, and go for a marathon or go for an ultra marathon, or even if it's a half marathon or a 10K, like do something big with it. And finding that balance too, because everyone sees the the big price tags on like the carbon plated shoes, all this
Sure.
stuff. Like, again, you can make it as simple as you want.
Sure.
Like most of my running shorts are like $30 big sporting good running shorts because they work and they're comfortable, and I don't really want to spend $100 on running gear, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say, I don't know about high point and low point, but just finding your place and finding what type of runner you're wanting to be. I
Yeah.
I feel it was like the biggest kind of just thing to get used to and find out about myself. Like, again, once I ran that half marathon like training run, it was really just it was such a big moment for me. It was just like, holy crap, I can do this, and it was. it really gave me a lot of confidence hitting that half marathon mark. And I think that's why I love half marathon so much, because it was like the first big distance I hit that was like,
Mm,
oh my gosh,
yeah, I can do
yeah,
this.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. So, and I think to your point, there's highs and lows throughout the whole thing, and you even said
Yeah,
it. There's a high and low on every single run in most cases too. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's cool. So the half marathon distance, I mean, outside of kind of it being your sort of first distance or first milestone that you hit, what do you really like about that distance compared to like a 10K or maybe even the marathon distance?
I think a half marathon is like the perfect distance to be hard enough to feel like you really hit a milestone or hit a big mark, but it's short enough to not absolutely trash you. Like if you
Yeah,
trained enough for it, yeah, it can be a fun run. You could run it as a fun run, or you could race it. Um, I, again, like for me in my mind, like a half marathon is like the perfect race distance for both, it being fun and challenging. I feel like with the marathon, it gets so painful at the end that
yeah,
once you cross the finish line, it's just you're overwhelmed with being drained of electrolytes and fluids and just and needing carbs and food and all this stuff
yeah,
and so, it takes so much mental work and mental focus just to run that long too. And I know I'm kind of crazy. I run without music like 95% of the time and all. So like
wow,
my marathon was totally without music and all. I mean, and it was 5:03 was my marathon time. So 5 hours,
that's a long time.
five
Yeah,
hours without music and your thoughts and
yeah,
all that. It is a long time. So yeah, I think by the end of a marathon, you're just so spent that there's not a ton of celebration, at least for me, with the one marathon I've ran so far. By the end of it, I was like, okay, let's go get food, and then I'm gonna go home and take a nap, like because I was just that exhausted.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, like I said, so the marathon, yeah, it wears you out a little bit too much. But again,
yeah,
the half marathon for me is like the perfect distance of challenging and also can be as fun as you want it to be. Not
yeah.
that marathons aren't fun. I mean, I had a ton of fun on my marathon, but yeah, if you're gonna have a challenging, fun run, do a half marathon.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with you. It's just out of reach enough that you feel like, all right,
Yeah,
like I'm tired, but it's not going to ruin my day today. Like
right, right, yeah, yeah.
it's a fun one for sure. Cool. So had no music, no nothing. Was it always like that from the beginning, or is that something that you developed later on?
Well, it's funny, kind of the opposite. I got these Shocks
Yeah.
headphones like a month ago. So I've
Oh,
been running with them on shorter runs like over the last month or so. So I've seriously gone like 18 months of running without ever listening to
that's
anything.
wild.
Yeah. And I know this is going to sound weird also, like having gone so long without listening to anything and just being in my head and dealing with my own thoughts and all that. Like the music is more boring to me. That's why, like, I've
That's
tried them on
interesting.
like a 10-mile run,
Yeah.
and by the end of it, I'd like by mile 6 or so, I turned them off, and I was just like, okay, it's too much going on, or it was like there was just too much going on in my head to deal with the music.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
yeah,
I've heard for a lot of people who run like without headphones for some of their runs that it's a good like processing tool or a good
yeah,
therapy tool for them. Is that what it really was for you? Is just time for you to kind of sit with what's going on in your life and kind of work through it?
yeah. I think so. I think so. Definitely just every run is some me time.
Yeah.
Whether it's headphones or not, now. But yeah, I think because I ran for 18 months starting off with no music or no podcast or anything like that, I really did have that kind of ingrained in me as that being my me time and
Yeah.
and time to work stuff out and think about stuff and all and I definitely notice like I'm a morning runner like
Hmm.
most of the time I definitely notice like in the mornings if I do listen to music or a podcast or something, my mind seems a little bit more busy
Mm.
than it would be otherwise if I had ran with no headphones and just had that, hour or 30 minutes or whatever, to kind of zone out and think about stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I actually like that a lot. I think I started in the beginning with music because I was maybe a little afraid to hear my thoughts for that amount of time, and you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I could totally see I could totally see that being a time where you can just kind of like center yourself and be present in
Yeah.
what you're doing and really kind of like focus inward. I think that's really cool.
It
So I
is.
know sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
I was just going to add to that real quick. It is. Sometimes if you're not listening to music and you're in a funk, it can
Yeah,
cause you to spiral a little bit. But I
sure.
usually have it more regulated, or myself more regulated to not let that happen. But there's been a handful of times where there's been a lot on my mind. I've been dealing with a lot of stuff or really stressed out. And it's been like, oh, this 5K that I'm going to, run around the neighborhood and stuff turned into 30 minutes of me just rage running because I was so just frustrated at something. But also that's a better outlet than, just sitting inside and stewing with
Totally.
it. So yeah,
Totally.
it's,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. It gets everything out, and you
yeah,
can always run longer if you need to. Like if you're
right,
not quite through it, you can keep going for a little bit longer. Make sure you get it out in a healthy way. So yeah, no, I
right,
think that's great. Yeah. So the marathon, obviously, without headphones in, you the energy's there. You can hear
yeah.
everybody. I'm sure that helped a lot. But was 20 miles your longest run? I didn't ask that
I
through training.
trained, 22 was my longest.
22.
Yeah,
Okay. So,
yeah,
like, on that 22-mile run, for example, no headphones in, like,
yeah.
how do you keep yourself focused, motivated? What kinda goes through your head on those longer ones?
Um, a lot of it is on those longer training runs, just once you hit kind of the pain wall, not the wall where you start blowing up and stuff, but when the
Sure.
pain starts creeping in, just kind of telling myself like this is what it's going to feel like at mile 16 of the marathon, and this is what it's
Mm,
going to feel like at mile 20 of the marathon. Better to feel what it feels now than be surprised by it, on race day. And that was one good thing. Like I didn't feel surprised by the run or the race or the distance or anything like that on race day, really. I felt very prepared going into it because, like, again, not every run is perfect and not every run is great. And, some of those longer runs, it was like, oh, I feel like a little Achilles pain and I'm
mhm.
only, mile 14 of this 18-mile training run. I got to figure out how to kind of make this work for the next 4 miles. And so,
Right.
like, just those runs, like, just kind of honestly, like, filing that away and then being able to kind of draw, look back on that and draw from that on race day. Being like, okay, remember, a month ago when you were at mile 15 of your training run and, your ankle started hurting, you made it through the next 3 miles of that training run, you know, kind of figure, honestly, kind of figure it out and make
Yeah.
it work for yourself on race day.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like, I've already been through this, so, yeah, I can do it now kinda thing.
right, right.
Yeah. Cool, cool. So let's talk about race day. I'm excited to hear what the experience was like. So, I guess let's start the week before. What did you do? Any sort of taper period? Was it a 1 week taper, 2 week taper? What did that look like for you?
I did a 2 week taper.
Mhm.
It was, I didn't do it the best way. I was just finishing up a 100-day run streak.
Uh huh.
And I finished that up 3 or 4 days after my 22-mile training run. So like, I kind of, I might have tapered a little bit too hard, like
Hmm.
looking back on it, because I just finished all this marathon training that I've been doing for 18 months, and
Yeah.
then had just finished a 100-mile run streak. And yeah, I tapered a little bit too hard looking back on it, for that, those 2 or 3 weeks leading up to it, because I hit all of those hit all my training, hit all the marks for that 100-mile run streak, and then got a little bit lazy. Probably took a couple, a few too many rest days, and
Sure.
definitely should have thrown in like an actual taper long run, because I went straight from 22 miles to like a 6 mile.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't taper properly. I really kind of went off the training plan a little bit too.
Yeah.
But yeah, but also I was a little bit worried of how my legs were going to be, having ran the 100-mile run streak and all that. But yeah, I mean, again, I would have handled that differently. Definitely handled the taper differently. And with my next marathon coming up at the end of next month, definitely plan on tapering properly and according to my training plan and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking back on it, I was definitely a little bit disappointed in myself on how the taper went and how lazy I got during the taper, honestly.
Well, it sounds like you were putting a lot of miles on your body at the end, like with the challenge and with the
Yeah.
22-mile run. So I don't know. Maybe I'm being the optimist here, but maybe you needed it a little bit, to
No,
take a little bit of a break.
yeah, I really, really realized by the end of that doing a 100-mile run streak, or a 100-day run
Yeah.
streak at the same time of a marathon training plan is probably not the best things to line up at the same time, just because, I mean, like I was saying, I'd have like a 18, 20, 22-mile run, and then, like, for me, had to go finish up this 100-day run streak. And it was
Yeah.
like, okay. And I was really trying to run more than a mile a day, for the short runs and for the rest day runs and stuff like that. So I ran a mile of that like 100-day run streak, maybe like 4 or 5 days
Oh
were only
yeah.
like 1 mile. Everything else was like 2.5 or 3, minimum. But also, I was in the middle of the marathon training plan and was running 5, 6 days a week based off that anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was just, again, for it being my first marathon, the run streak and the marathon training plan all lining up was probably not the smartest heading
Yeah.
into my first marathon. So yeah, you live and you learn.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, you
Yeah.
took on a lot
Mhm.
in your first year for sure. Um so through the week leading up, what were you doing, any sort of like nutrition planning around carb loading, or did you have any strategy there the week of?
Not concrete or
Mhm.
anything. A friend of mine who had ran a handful of marathons, she told me to eat like an athlete.
Yeah.
Again, because her and I had talked about, like, me playing sports growing up, and so did she, and all. And she just, yeah, like, eat twice as much this
Yeah.
week leading into it as you think you should be, and drink twice as much water and all that. So again, there was not like, I wasn't trying to hit like daily macros or anything like that. Just that whole week, I was consciously thinking of like, okay, maybe make an emphasis on carbs and protein today, and be sure you're drinking enough water and getting electrolytes every day, all
Yeah.
that stuff. Yeah.
Cool. 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 So race day comes around, or I guess the day before. So it was the Atlanta Marathon, you said, right? So
Yeah.
you live in Atlanta, you said? So it was
About,
somewhere local to you?
yeah, about 30, 45 minutes north of Atlanta is where I live. So yeah, not,
Cool.
not far from downtown.
That's
Yeah.
always nice. I've talked about that with a few people, that like being able to sleep in your own bed the night before, I'm sure is great,
Yeah.
and being able to sleep in your in your bed that night after your marathon is great too.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure. It was, yeah, coming home
yeah,
and taking a shower at my house and sleeping in my own bed. Yeah, all that was very nice after
yeah,
my first marathon.
yeah, cool. So before, I guess that means that logistically you were already in your area.
Mhm.
So what was going through your head the night before? Were you a pile of nerves? Did you have kind of like a calm come over you? What were you feeling?
Well, well, it's funny, and this kind of just goes to show you that Instagram and social media is not reality.
Sure.
I was actually like wrapping up a breakup at the time, and
Oh, really?
so that happened the month, like the few months like leading up to it, and so like
Wow.
race day plans got trashed like very last minute and stuff. So it was all on me to like kind of figure it out. And yeah, it wasn't, it's fine. But yeah, it went from one plan to something else, sort of last minute. And anyways, just I mean, I woke up at like 4:30, and by 5:30 or so, I was driving down to Atlanta and got there. I don't know, about 6:30 or so. Met up with a couple friends who I knew were going to be there before the race, and just hung out with them for a minute, stretched some, you know, stood in the longest line for a porta potty ever,
Yeah.
and then just trying not to, or trying to keep my cool, honestly, because, it being the first one, it being the starting line, all these people and the whole atmosphere, like everyone's, amped up and everything, but just trying to stay kind of as calm as I could until I crossed the start line.
Yeah.
That was kind of the plan. And, drink some water, drink some other stuff here and there, while I was standing around waiting. Yeah, that was basically race day morning.
Yeah, just killing some time.
Yeah,
It feels like it takes forever that morning.
Yeah,
And
for
you
sure.
said that you were there with a group of people. Were there people who were running the marathon with you, or they were running the half, or who
No,
was kind of the community there?
so just two of my friends had driven
Mm,
up from Savannah.
mm,
Made like a 4 hour drive up from Savannah to Atlanta, and again, I knew they were going to be there, and those were the only two people like that I thought were going to be there, like for me. And then the race started, and then that was a whole big surprise too. Once the race started, because there was tons of people there, that surprised me. So yeah,
yeah,
that was another really cool thing. But yeah, so Ellie and my friend Ellie and my friend Garrett,
cool.
they were there, pre-race and everything, and
Yeah,
honestly,
respect for the crew.
trying to keep me distracted and not seeing like Nicole or Alex or anyone else who were there to surprise me, because they were kind of around, too and stuff. So it was, yeah, they had a
Yeah,
whole plan to keep me distracted and make sure I didn't find out they had all this stuff planned
yeah.
to surprise me. Yeah.
That's so cool. So did they surprise you along the race? Is that what happened? That's so cool.
Yeah. So, again, I knew Ellie and Garrett were going to be there, and I saw them pre-race, and they saw me like start and everything. And then I got to mile one, and at mile one, they were all like staggered 100 yards like down from each other. So I would see one and be like, "Oh my gosh, like Alex,
Yeah,
Herms, he flew in from Boston. Like
that's
I
awesome.
had no idea." And then there he was standing at the side of the road at mile one. Totally surprised me. And then Nicole was like another 100 or 200 yards on down, and then a couple more, just staggered on down. And it was just, yeah, mile one, just like having
Like
five
back to
people
back.
just bam, bam, bam. Yeah, just was something. Yeah, it was really special. Really
That's so
special.
cool. How did you
Yeah.
keep from not coming out the gate too quick? Because I feel like if I saw my friends at mile one, I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm about to sprint this second
Well,
mile.
it was so funny. I I stood in the porta potty line forever to use the bathroom before the race started, and I never actually made it into the porta potty. So, like, seriously, at like 3/4 of a mile into the race, there was a porta potty. I was like, oh gosh, I have to stop. So I
Yeah.
just made a stop and all, and then yeah, I definitely, after seeing them, took off a little bit, and I looking at my splits and everything. The first like 3 miles or so were way too fast, like,
Uh-huh.
way too fast from what I was, planning on and everything, and that was another just first marathon mistake, starting off way too fast.
Yeah.
Um, but it was tough not to be so amped up and fired up, given just the moment, of the race and everything, and also just seeing them and all at, like I said, like right at mile one,
Yeah.
um, just being like, oh my gosh, like, and then Nicole was like, oh yeah, we'll see you along because we're gonna like Uber around. So I mean, I saw them like 4 or 5 more times just along the route because they kept like looping up ahead of
Yeah,
me and
that's
stuff.
so cool.
Yeah,
Great
yeah,
friends.
yeah, for
Uh,
sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's awesome. And the spectators are huge too. Like I didn't have a
Yeah.
huge crew with me. I only had, my immediate family and my boyfriend
Mhm.
with me. But like every time I saw them, I was like, oh, cool. I'm
Yeah.
doing this thing, and like I have people here for me. It's just such a cool feeling to have people there cheering you on. So that's great that you had your
Yeah,
your community behind you.
for sure. And honestly, just Atlanta is such a big running, city and stuff, and just the
Yeah.
crowds, like you were saying, the crowd support, not even from, my friends who had surprised me and people I knew that, like, just the random lady or the random man who's holding up a sign, just screaming their
Yeah.
heads off for you, and, it's awesome. A race community, race atmosphere is really something special. Something just, I want, like, everyone to experience once. Like,
Totally.
not even like a full marathon, but like a big 10K race or a bigger race, and not a tiny little local 5K. And there's nothing wrong against nothing against local 5Ks. Like everyone loves their local 5K races. Just
Yeah.
I feel like everyone, if you really love running, go at least once to a big race,
Yeah.
like, and just experience all that because it makes you love running even more.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it
It's
really
unreal.
does. And then Atlanta, like, I was a little bit surprised with the Atlanta Marathon because it is such a big running city and all. There's only about 10,000 participants, full
Mm-hmm.
marathon and half. And I know that, like, that is a big field and all, but, like, the Dallas Marathon and half marathon, like me and below average running and all, did in December, I think it was 22,000
Yeah.
participants for the half and the full, and like, that's a huge race. Like, man, and even nothing against the Atlanta Marathon. Like, again, the spectators were great, everyone cheering on was great, and all. But like the Dallas Marathon weekend and running the Dallas Half Marathon with like that big of a field, that was kind of next level.
Sure.
And I'm actually running the Dallas full marathon in December, and again, I
Cool.
can't wait to go back, to Texas and Dallas and run it again. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, the race environment is crazy, and I agree with you. I think the being if you can't run it, even being a spectator at one of these big races is
yeah,
just it's unreal.
yeah,
It can really inspire you, and I think Alex was the first one that mentioned it to me. But just like the importance of seeing people out there that are runners like you too can
yeah,
really help you wrap your mind around, especially your first marathon. Like, oh,
for
okay, if
sure.
they can do it, like I can do it too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
and just honestly, like, I mean, I'm speaking of that, like, I mean, you can't tell a lot through like Instagram and stuff, but like I'm 6'2", like I'm a big dude. I'm like 240 pounds, and
Sure.
I'm big. And finding like other guys and stuff through Instagram, like Alex and all, and being like, yeah, like we can all be runners. It doesn't matter,
Yeah,
And yeah, it's cool, definitely seeing how inclusive the running community has become. You know,
totally.
'Cause, I mean, you talk to some people and they think all runners should be 5'5" and 150 pounds. That's just not the case. I mean,
No, not at all.
not the
I would
case at
even
all.
argue that the majority is not that group anymore. I
No,
mean, I
yeah,
know you haven't been in the running world long. I have not either. But it the people that I've talked to that have been in the world a little bit longer, it's like it hasn't always been like that. So
yeah,
I think we're
yeah,
moving in the right direction. But there definitely is definitely some people who are still stuck on the kind of
yeah,
pace side of
yeah,
things.
for sure.
But yeah, cool. So I guess if you want to break down the marathon a little bit more, where did you feel like you were feeling the best? Where did you feel like you were feeling the worst? Like what was the whole experience like?
The so the way the route was set up for the Atlanta Marathon, the first half was less hilly than the second half,
Mm,
which really sucked. I mean, it
right.
really sucked. Um, so honestly, the first half was pretty solid. Like I kind of felt like I was cruising, like
Yeah.
having a really good race and all, and then about mile 16, the hills in Atlanta really started, and like it was okay the first few miles, but getting to mile 18, 19, I feel like I really started to feel it about mile 18.
Mm.
The hills started really kind of getting to me, and from mile 18 to like mile 21 was like a big low spot. Just those like 3 miles, we went really kind of into this low spot of Atlanta, and like from mile 18 to 21, it was basically we were just gradually coming uphill back to like
Brutal.
city level or so. Yeah. And yeah, it was just rolling hills uphill for those 3 miles, and it was just, it knocked me on my butt, like for real. Um, but then it flattened out a little bit more. Hit a couple water stations. Got some peanut butter pretzels. Honestly, that really helped. And just kind of refueled a little bit about mile 21, 22, and then the last couple miles were okay. I was doing a lot of like run walking and
Hmm.
stuff, and then Alex, Herm runs, and Ellie, who's a part of Bar, um, they both actually met me about mile like 24, 24 and a half or so, and not kind of, but they did run those, final like 2 miles, mile and a half with me.
Yeah,
So that was huge, just them kind of, taking me in to the
definitely.
finish line. Yeah.
Definitely. How were
Yeah.
you feeling before they joined you for those last 2 miles? Like, did you feel like you hit the wall at that point, or you were still feeling pretty
Yeah,
good?
yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And again, it was a brutal section of the course. Like again, from mile 18 to 21, it was just gradually uphill, and then
Hmm.
you know, coming by the state capitol in Atlanta, um, the the road we were running up for like half a mile had like almost a 30% like side hill,
Jeez.
like the
Yeah.
concrete, the concrete. So I told Alex or whoever I was running with, at the time, I was like, I feel like my left foot is a full like 6 inches or foot like higher than my right foot, like just how I
Yeah.
was running, and that was again like mile 21, like right at the end of that tough stretch, and I was just so over it. Honestly, I was just like, good grief, get me there.
Yeah.
And then luckily, like kind of right as I got to the top of the hill, out of the hilly part and back to a normal kind of well kept, section of road, is when I caught up with Alex and Ellie, and again, just them kind of taking me in those last 2 miles was huge, huge, and them keeping a better eye on my pace than even I was doing, and being encouraging, being like, okay, let's run the next half mile and then take a 2-minute walk break or whatever it
Mm.
was, and kind of breaking it up like that instead of really just kicking me in the butt and being like, run, run,
Yeah.
run. They did kind of, space it out and stuff. And yeah, I mean, it was a good, final 2 miles for sure.
Yeah, that's great. That's great that they were able to join you at the end. That's
Yeah.
very cool. And
Yeah.
kind of have a strategy for you, because I know like I was not thinking at mile 23, 24, 25. So it was probably kind of nice to have friends that were like thinking for you almost, I guess you could
No, for
say.
sure. For sure. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And again, like, I, my first, like, walk break during the whole thing, like, other than stopping at, like, a water station or something like that, I did take a
Hmm.
walk break at, like, mile, like, 15 or 16. And I was really proud of myself for that, like, not taking any walk breaks until then.
Yeah.
But again, like, taking that first walk break and being like, okay, it's starting to get a little hillier, and, you might have to break it up into walking and running for the rest of it. Um, and I was already thinking like, okay, I could do, run 3 minutes, walk 2 minutes, and like break it
Mm-hmm.
up into 5 minute chunks like that. And so I was already thinking of kind of segmenting it down into manageable chunks. But again, like you said, my brain was so fried. And then,
Yeah.
you know, mile 24, 25, and, you know, onto the finish line with them being like, okay, that's a walk break, or okay, we'll make it to this, you know, light pole, and then take a walk break, you know, and me not having to
Yeah.
monitor it and think about it was definitely, you know, definitely nice of them, and I really appreciated not to
Yeah.
have to spend that brain power on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's huge. That's huge. Cool. Well, what was the finish line feeling like for you? Like, did you cross and was it a feeling of relief or accomplishment? Like, what was it like?
um, it it really kind of I was trying to keep it together because honestly, my left calf was
Hmm.
cramping up. The final hadn't happened all race, but my left calf started cramping up the final like 200 yards,
Oh, no way.
and I swear,
Horrible timing.
no, I swear I was like 20 feet from the finish line, and I
Yeah.
felt like a cramp coming on, and it crossed my mind. I'm like, I'm not collapsing because of this
Yeah, right
cramp
here.
right here, 10 feet from the finish line. So seriously, like that was honestly my main thought. The last like 200, 300 yards is like, do not
Yeah.
let this calf cramp make you go down this close to the finish
Right.
line. And thankfully it got across the finish line. And but I did like I cramped up the second I started walking on it and like had to stop for a second, like stretch it out and everything. Like it was painful.
Yeah.
So that for that to happen the second I crossed the finish line was through the whole threw off the whole like post race plan I had. So just
Sure,
the second
sure.
having to take care of that cramp. But now everyone, like all my friends who had shown up and everything, were there at the finish line. It was just, you know, 18 months worth of work and training and
Yeah.
dedication to it, just culminating into that moment, and emotions really hit, and honestly, I think there was so much exhaustion that
Hmm.
I got more emotional from it once I made it home, and you know everything was kind of back to neutral. I was
Sure, sure.
like, oh my gosh, I really just did that, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, so that was, you know, like I said, definitely just was more tired, and yeah, it was definitely like a big emotional moment, and I was super happy and just super excited, and all that. But yeah, once I got home, the just the reality of it really hit, and
Just hit you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it was like
Very
I
cool.
spent all that time, I ran all those miles, you know, I was that committed, and I did it. So you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So cool. So yeah, so it hit you a little late when you got home,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it did hit you like
Oh, for sure.
the
Yeah,
sense of accomplishment of this whole thing. That's awesome. I think that's the best part of the day is to like have that realization that
yeah,
holy shit, like I just did this thing that I put my mind to, like you said 18 months ago.
right.
That's huge.
And for sure, like it definitely, again, just like the exhaustion, having seen everyone too, like it was an emotional roller coaster. Like
Yeah.
every marathon for everyone is an emotional roller coaster. But
Yeah.
again, being there and thinking, you know, I was kind of running this on my own, you know, and then seeing everyone that surprised me, and just like that changed my entire mood for like the whole race.
Yeah.
You know, and then everyone being there for me at the finish line was another big, you know, thing. And you know, I'm, you know, everyone knows the like post race pictures and all the stupid little dances. Yeah, for content, you gotta get some content.
Of course. Yeah, you gotta.
but but no, yeah. And then it was fun. We all went out and grabbed like a late lunch afterwards, and all just hung out and talked about the race more and everything. So that was good to have that, you know, that hour, 2 hours after the race to kind of hang out and decompress and you know
Hmm.
talk about the race and honestly thank all of them. I just kept thanking them, you know, so much for surprising me because again, I don't know how that, you know, that changed my entire race. Like it changed my whole marathon day. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just can't thank all of my friends that surprised me on race day enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Cool. So had some time to decompress, and then I know that I think I remember you posting it that you were already signed up for another marathon like pretty quickly after your the Atlanta one, right? Or sorry, not the oh yeah,
Oh
the
yeah.
Atlanta one. So so when did you decide that you were going to run a second one?
Well, so I'm running Grandma's marathon at the end of June,
Yeah.
and I had signed up for that one a month or so before the Atlanta marathon. So I'd already
Got
signed up
it.
for my second marathon before I ran my first
The
marathon.
first one. Yeah.
Just knowing like I enjoy, yeah, I had fallen into love. I had fallen in love with running
Yes.
that much already. I was like, oh, I know I want to do more of these already. I knew Grandma's, such a big popular one, supposed to be
Yeah.
gorgeous up, in Minnesota on Lake Superior. Um, one of our, one of another below average running ambassadors, Lindsay, she's actually running the full, and
Mm,
Alex, Herm runs, he's actually running the full. So
cool.
he and I will run some together. And I'm sure Lindsay, she's fast, so she'll be way ahead of us. But just, again, like knowing people who are going to be at the race, you know, and knowing that I wanted to do more marathons even before that first one. That really was just like, okay, I have a chance to do this, and I'm gonna hurry up and sign up before it sells out because I know it was
Yeah.
such a big one. So yeah, so I got
Cool.
Grandma's coming up next month.
Cool, very exciting. So, I guess
Yeah,
what do you feel like has changed? I know you haven't had quite as long to train for grandmas, but you already had a different a base than you did before.
yeah, yeah.
So what's changed this time around training than the first time around?
Um, Definitely like changing up my nutrition and
Mm,
all like during training. I I just ran that first marathon back in February. I've actually lost 15 pounds since then. So I'm going to be, coming into this second marathon a little bit lighter and a little bit more better, a little bit better shape and
mhm.
all. I, I'm interested to see the difference. Like if it makes a difference coming in a few pounds lighter,
Yeah.
yeah, how it will affect my, performance on race day and stuff like that. But I've kept up my mileage, pretty well. Um, those couple weeks after the marathon, I definitely not slacked off. It was a couple weeks after my marathon. It wasn't
Yeah.
like I
Yeah,
was
you need a
slacking
break.
off. But yeah,
Sure.
yeah, I definitely took a few. I took some time off and really scaled back on my mileage, really for about 3 or 4 weeks after that first marathon. But then just diving right back into it and ramping up kind of halfway through March or so. You know, I knowing that I've done one and knowing I can do one definitely makes it less stressful.
Yeah.
Going into this second one, knowing what to expect, all that. Also, I feel like I'm looking forward to this one a little bit more. Not that I was not looking forward to my first one, but that first one was just like it was, such a big goal coming
Yeah.
from couch to marathon and everything. Yeah, it was, yeah, yeah. I
You feel
feel like I'm in a way better place, honestly, like going into the second one than the first one. So I'm
yeah.
excited to, see how I do the second one.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure just confidence it plays a lot into
Yeah,
that, right? Just
yeah.
like knowing what's coming up for you and knowing maybe where you're gonna struggle a little bit I guess I don't know, just going into it with a little bit more knowledge maybe than the first time.
Right, and honestly, like taking from the mistakes I made, like the,
Yeah,
kind of not tapering properly for the first one, I know, like to really follow the taper and not slack off so much, heading into the second one. Also,
sure.
hydration was really like fuel, like as far as like carbs and everything goes, like on race day for the first one, it was fine.
Hmm.
But hydration, I needed to stay on top of that way better than I did. So just, learning from that mistake too and being like, okay, just take an extra few seconds at each water station and drink an extra, cup of water or an extra couple cups of water instead of just breezing through it and
Yeah.
dumping it halfway over, all over
Right.
yourself and getting a half mouthful of it, just again, like I said, just learning from those first race day mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Cool. Well, do you have any sort of goals for this next marathon, or is it more so just to complete it?
Um, well, again, like my first marathon was in 5:03, so I think a pretty tangible goal would be to break 5 hours. I mean, it'd
Sure.
be a 3 minute, PR.
Yeah.
Also, Grandma's is way flatter than Atlanta.
That would be nice.
So yeah, really looking forward to that. Breaking 5 hours is number one like goal, and not that I know I'll hit it. Like who knows what's going to happen on race day? But I think
Right.
that's the most tangible goal I can, set. But then like 4:30, honestly, I like that's a more kind of big goal that I really want to go for. So 4:30 for the
Cool.
second one. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Well, great. That's awesome. So thank you so much for, I guess, for breaking us down through training and breaking down your first race experience, and excited to hear what's coming up next for you.
Yeah.
If you could like offer any advice to somebody who's maybe thinking about running their first marathon or is already training for their first marathon, what advice would you give somebody like that?
Um, I think like marathon training or running a marathon and running in general, like so many people look at it as this just enormous mountain that they have to tackle. And starting out, like I definitely had that mindset. Like I wanted to run a marathon, but starting off I didn't know if I could, but little by little you'll be really surprised at what you can do. And yeah, just running a marathon and running in general is not just this big giant thing you have to overcome. It can again be as simple or not as you want to make it. And yeah, just keep showing yourself what you're capable of. Like, I mean, it's one thing I've gotten out of running is it's such a confidence booster.
Yeah.
Like being able to go out there and like hit new mileage that you've never hit before. Just at least for me, it really boosts my ego and
Totally.
boosts my confidence for sure. And again, like just keep on pushing yourself because it's a great way to find out a lot about yourself. And it really, yeah, you'd be really surprised at what you can do if you just stick with it.
Totally. Yeah, I was joking with somebody else that you prove to yourself that you can run a marathon while you're training for a marathon. Like
No,
it's
yeah,
it's not
exactly.
something that you just wake up one day and you do, or you can wrap
Yeah,
your mind around doing. It's like you with the 13-mile run. As soon as you
yeah,
kind of can prove to yourself that you can do something like this, you just keep proving to yourself along the way until the big day, and then you knock it out.
right. Yeah, again, with that, first half marathon, I was like, I've hit this in, 6, 7 months, and I have, 6 months before or between now and now in the marathon, like I can do this. I can double this in,
Yeah.
the time it took me to get here. And again, like you don't know how far you're gonna go unless you start. You'll never know how far you're gonna go unless you start. But once you start, again, you'll just continually blow yourself away with what you're capable of. So stick with it for sure.
Totally. Cool. Yeah, that's great. And then last couple of questions for you are just
Mhm.
some questions I've been asking at the end for everybody. I keep giving a disclaimer because I think it's important that fuel and shoes are your own journey. Go get your feet measured. Go do trial and error when it comes to fuel and nutrition and all
Yeah.
that good stuff. But for you personally, what sort of fuel options were your favorite?
I really found that I always I always mispronounce it. Martin? Is it just
Yeah,
Martin? Okay, so
That's how
Martin,
I've said it. Yeah.
because I've heard one person say it as like Martin, like Morton or something. I was like that.
Oh,
So anyway, Martin,
I'll
yeah.
back you up on it. Yeah.
I really found that Martin gels, like, for me, sit with my stomach the best. Like, I've tried a bunch of
Mhm.
different ones, but I get a lot of indigestion from others, and honestly, just the fact that it's unflavored and really doesn't
Mm-hmm.
taste like anything, and yeah, it sits well with me. So I like Martin. Um, Also, like, as far as like drinking, like hydration and stuff like that goes, Liquid IV is just the easiest. Like it's at
Yeah.
Costco, so buy it a lot.
Yeah.
Also, just Runway, it has like it has collagen in it and some other multivitamins. So those two, Liquid IV and also Runway,
Cool.
are my two like go-to electrolyte things. But again, like Martin is my preferred gel for sure. And
Cool.
and I do like I dabble with the chews and the gummies and stuff like that. To me, it's so much more effort to deal with a
Yeah.
bag and have to, yeah, just pop a gel. Yeah, it's easy.
Totally. Yeah. Cool. And then what about shoes? I know you said that you were a big shoe fan from the beginning. So what have been your favorites along the way, and what are your kind of current favorites now?
Yeah, it's too funny. I never never thought New Balance was was really. I never thought New Balance was for many people other than like middle-aged dads,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
or frat boys, you
Yeah.
know. But honestly, New Balance. I have a wide foot. I wear a 13 wide, so finding shoes that fit my foot it's a pain.
Sure.
And luckily, like I've really found like a home with New Balance shoes. Like I feel like Cinderella in New Balance shoes. They're just
Sure.
perfect
Sure.
for my foot. Yeah, any New Balance 13 wides. Yeah, great on my foot. I raced my marathon in the New Balance Supercomp Trainer V2. I have two pairs of those. I love them. For a carbon plated max cushion, trainer, awesome. And also the New Balance Rebel V3. I have a PR my half marathon in those. Also the Rebel V4 is awesome. So, but yeah, as far as shoes go, I'm a
New
big New
Balance.
Balance running fan. Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
Yep.
Oh, very cool. All right, great. Well, last question. I know we kind of already talked about you've got Grandma's marathon coming up. Is there anything else coming up for you this year that that you're training for or plan to train for, or just leaving your options open?
No, yeah. I am actually doing the milestone events Zion 100-mile
Oh
challenge,
yeah, I did see
and
that. Yeah.
so it's a 60-hour cutoff, and it's basically you have the 60 hours to run as many miles as you can, with 100 miles being the max. But you also get like medals along the way. So
Cool.
like I'll get a medal for a half marathon distance, a full marathon distance, a 50K distance, a 50-mile distance, 100K, 100-mile. So like there's a bunch of
Yeah.
each each race distance that you hit, you do get a medal for and all that. So that was one of the things that appealed to that for me, having only ran for 18 months. I'm like, I'm not doing a 100-mile race,
Sure.
like not an actual like 100-mile ultra, no way. But the way it's set up in the format, like I have the option to take, go sleep in a bed and take a shower and change clothes and then come back out and run another, 10-mile loop
Yeah.
and keep racking up my miles in that, 60-hour window. So yeah, so that's like the big one. That's I think Labor Day weekend. It's the last weekend in August.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, out in Utah, and again, it's almost like this second marathon kind of falls in with like a training run for that. Not that not that a marathon is a real like training run,
Yeah.
but just how my schedule with races and running and everything worked out this year. So I'll have grandma's at the end of June, and then all of July and most of August to really prep for the 100-mile challenge. So yeah, so it kind of worked out for me.
That's cool. I didn't realize that that was the race format. That's actually a really great way to dip your toes into the ultra world. It kind of take the pressure off a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. It's on a 10-mile loop, and yeah, you're not. It's not. That was what was so appealing. It's not a
Yeah.
point-to-point race where I have to huff it. And again,
Yeah.
like for me, I ran for 18 months. 19 months. Like a 100-mile ultra was not a realistic goal for me at this time, but this absolutely is. And I can go out there and run 50 miles, or I can go out there and run 60 miles in that 60-hour window, or however far I run, and still feel accomplished and not
Totally.
DNF, with it and stuff. So yeah, it's the first year they're doing it, and yeah, definitely excited to see the setup and see the format and be a participant in it. So it's cool
Cool.
for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. I'm maybe a little selfishly interested to see how it goes because that
Yeah,
sounds perfect to dip your like I said, just to kind of dip your toes in, and
yeah,
take the pressure off for sure. So that's
yeah.
cool. I'm excited to see how it goes.
Also, just like we were talking, like the inclusivity of running, like hasn't always been there, and events like this, like really kind of making it more open to the running
Yeah.
community and not so closed off to just the top tier ultra marathoners.
Yeah.
Makes it more accessible and more appealing for sure for someone like me, again, who's been running 18, 19 months and only one marathon under my belt so far. So yeah,
Totally.
definitely
Totally.
excited to see how it goes and to be running in it. So yeah.
Cool. Cool. Very exciting. All right, great. Well, last question for you is just where can we find you, and if there's anything else that you want to plug.
You can you can follow me at Trap Daddy Running on Instagram and TikTok, and I do have a YouTube page that I haven't used in like maybe a year now or so, but also on YouTube. But Trap Daddy Running everywhere, all over social media. So yeah, Trap Daddy Running.
Perfect. Cool. Well, Travis, thank you so much again for coming on. Awesome to talk to you. I love your story. I love your social media too. If you're not following him, his content is great. I love that. Yeah, everything is very positive and
Yeah,
uplifting, and like inclusivity is big. I
for
know
sure.
a big thing for you. So keep it up, and excited to see what's next for you. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Taylor. It's been fun.